Welcome back everybody. Today we're going to move to a new section of the course, and in this section we are going to focus on lexical resource or vocabulary. And in this first lecture what we're going to look at is the idea of topic related vocabulary. By the end of this lecture you should understand why topic related vocabulary is so important and how you can use it to your advantage to get a higher score in the lexical resource category of the band descriptors. So let's get started by thinking about two topics, museums and schools. These are just two topics I've picked at random as they are two typical topics which may appear in your task 2 question, but of course there are many other topics which might appear instead. Now, what's obvious is that these two topics are very different, but that they have similarities. What might not be so obvious is that each of these topics has a specific set of vocabulary which relates to them individually. For example, you would see the word curators when talking about museums, you would see the word teachers when talking about schools. But you wouldn't see curators when talking about schools, and you're not likely to see teachers when talking about museums. So your task with vocabulary in this regard is to demonstrate to the examiner your knowledge of these sets of vocabulary. Try to limit your use of very general and vague language which could be used for more than one topic. For example, the word staff. That could relate to a number of different fields. So to illustrate the importance of this topic related vocabulary, we're going to look at 2 sentences. Now, I want you to read this pair of sentences and decide for yourself which sentence in the pair is better. So the first sentence here, museums, most people would agree, are great places of education thanks to the knowledge of their curators, their well-preserved artifacts from previous time eras, and their enlightening exhibitions and galleries. Contrast that with the second sentence. Museums, most people would agree, are great places of education thanks to the knowledge of their staff, their well-cared-for things, and their rooms full of interesting items and pictures. Hopefully, you chose the first option. Why does the first option make more sense? Why is it more accurate? Why does it meet the band descriptor requirements more directly? Well, just have a look at this. If I change the word museums for schools, the sentence still makes sense. Schools are great places of education, thanks to the knowledge of their staff, their well cared for things, and their rooms full of interesting items and pictures. So, because of the vagueness of the language here, you can directly substitute the main topic for a completely different topic and it still makes sense. It should not be this way. So have a look at the language in the top paragraph and you can see why that sentence works much better. We've got language like curators, well-preserved artifacts, time eras, and enlightening exhibitions and galleries. You only get these in a museum. So, one way that you can improve your topic-related vocabulary is to make vocabulary tables for topics. Here are a couple of examples. You could use, for example, with museums, you could remember to write down different word formations as well. You've got curator as the noun of the person and curate as the verb, artifact, well preserved, exhibition, exhibit, gallery, collect, collection, archive. Notice that I'm writing down all the word formations here as well, verb and noun. If we have schools, we have teacher, student, teacher-student ratio, nice noun phrase there, class, classroom, head teacher, star pupil, attend, attendance, to cram for an exam. Public health, obese, obesity, health-related issues, sports facilities, healthcare system, spread of viruses, notice collocations here being used as well, threats to health, healthy choice. Just a little point to make about that purple star. purple asterisk on museums, exhibition and exhibit. It's a commonly confused word. An exhibit is like a smaller version of an exhibition. While an exhibit would take up just one room in a museum, an exhibition may take up an entire wing. So, while that is important, while topic-related vocabulary is essential, do use your common sense as well. It won't look so natural if you just spend the whole sentence cramming in topic-related words. You need to use some general vocabulary so that the essay can breathe a little bit. Consider these two sentences. Curators of museums and art galleries archive every artifact and painting discovered so they may later exhibit these works of art and historical relics to museum enthusiasts and historians in exhibition halls. Now, after a deep breath, let's have a look at the second sentence. Museum curators often store the artifacts they find in an archive so that they can later be presented to the public in exhibitions. Yes, the second sentence does have more general vocabulary, things like the public rather than museum enthusiasts and historians. But it allows the sentence to breathe. Okay, so you need to find the balance between topic-related vocabulary and natural fluency. That takes a bit of practice, but it's a start to start thinking about topic-related vocabulary, trying to use a little bit more in your essays, but try not to get carried away. So never use words that you aren't confident using. Find a tutor to experiment with new words and to check that you have the correct understanding. As always, the IELTSteacher.com is one such place where you can find a tutor who can help you in this regard. Okay, so now we understand the importance of topic-related vocabulary. We know how we can use it to improve our score, and we also know how we can improve that vocabulary by creating vocabulary tables. In the next lecture, we're going to take this fluency to a new level by looking at the importance of collocations. And if you haven't heard of collocations before, then join me in the next lecture and you'll learn all about them. I'll see you there. Hi guys, in today's lecture we are going to focus on the importance of collocations. Now, this is all about how to make your vocabulary sound as natural as possible. So this is not just important for IELTS, but also important for life. So in general, if you are hoping to move to an English-speaking country, I'm sure that you would want to sound as natural as possible and as native as possible. Collocations are the way to do that. Here, fluency via vocabulary. So let's get started by asking ourselves, what is a collocation? Well, let's return for a moment to the band descriptors and look at band 7 for lexical resource. In this category, we have uses less common lexical items with some awareness of style and collocation. There's that word, collocation. But what does it really mean? Well, a collocation is a set of two or more words which are commonly used together. Simple as that. As simple as that. The hard thing is working out which words collocate with other words. Let's look at an example. The phrase make an effort is a collocation because these words are often seen together and they express a particular meaning. You don't have the expression do an effort or take an effort. The expression, the collocation, is make an effort. So why is this so important? Well, it's important for a number of reasons. First of all, collocations are important because they make language fluent, precise, expressive, and natural. Compare, he's making a tattoo and he's getting a tattoo. The wrong version will instantly expose you as having a weak command of English. This is a commonly confused collocation. Note that getting is the correct verb to use with the noun tattoo. We don't make a tattoo, we get a tattoo. Another reason collocations are important is because they allow you to express lengthy ideas with just a few words, which saves you precious time during the test and saves you precious time in life. When we're speaking, this is why we use collocations. They're shorthand for longer ideas and expressions. Compare, he has decided what he is going to do with he has made up his mind. That latter example, a collocation, is both more natural and more concise, saves on time. And finally, collocations are useful because when grouped together, they demonstrate your language command. That is what you are trying to do when you achieve Band 7 in IELTS. So let's focus on that idea here. When grouped together, collocations demonstrate your language command. What we're going to do is look at two paragraphs. One of them shows a strong command of English and the other one shows a weak command of English. See if you can work out which one is which. So first of all, one of the heavy problems about transport in public places is the expensive prices of tickets which people pay. This might happen due to the absence of competition between bus and train companies, which means that solitary companies can control the transport choices in an entire area and can therefore put their fees to be as expensive as they want. Now let's have a look at the second paragraph. One of the most pressing problems with public transport is the extortionate ticket prices which customers are required to pay. This might happen due to the lack of competition within the public transport industry, allowing one company to have a monopoly over transport options and charges in a particular town or city. Now, if your English command is strong and your comprehension is strong and you have immersed yourself in English enough, you should instantly realize that the top paragraph displays a weak command and the second paragraph displays a strong command. Why does it display a strong command? Because of language like this: pressing problems, public transport, extortionate ticket prices, required to pay, lack of competition, public transport industry, have a monopoly over, transport options. Much more natural, much more concise, much more fluent than things like heavy problems, expensive prices of tickets, absence of competition, solitary companies. These are not expressions which we use in English. Technically they make sense, they're not grammatically incorrect, they're just not common enough for them to be collocations, and there's this really stifled, unnatural sound coming through in the paragraph. So let's put the spotlight for a moment on that weak paragraph, the weak collocation command paragraph. So, what's good about it? As you could probably guess, what's good about it is that, there's some less common and more advanced vocabulary shown. We've got words like absence and solitary and fees. It's not what your standard Band 5, Band 6 level student shows. And there's plenty of topic-related vocabulary too. We've got words like tickets, bus and train, fees, public places. If you were paying attention in the last lecture, you'll know how important that topic-related vocabulary is, and that's great. However, unfortunately, the paragraph also shows terrible collocation command. So the above good vocabulary is almost completely compromised due to the fact that it is not used correctly with collocation. It's such a shame, when you see this paragraph, it's got all this great vocabulary, but it's not being used in a natural way. So it's completely wiping out the good that was demonstrated in that paragraph. So how can we improve our collocation skill? Well, there's a number of things that we can do. Mainly, the way that you improve your collocation ability is to just immerse yourself in English. So we'll look at what that means in a moment, but just try to surround yourself with as much English as possible. Read books. Young adult novels are particularly useful because they often feature lots of natural dialogue and not too much difficult vocabulary. So it's a good thing to read at your level, but you'll also get plenty of natural vocabulary coming through. Listen to audiobooks. Don't listen to songs. Listen to songs, listen to music, but don't do that as a way of studying, as a way of preparing for IELTS. Audiobooks are far better than music for studying. A lot more vocabulary coming through, used in collocations as well. A lot more entertaining in my view. But if you're only listening to Justin Bieber, what are you going to get? Baby, baby, baby. It's not really going to help you in IELTS. Lastly, try to have conversations with native speakers. There are websites online which offer you the possibility to speak to natives for free. I believe there was a site called italki, italki.com, which used to offer conversations with natives for free in a sort of language exchange. Not sure if it's still doing that, but I'm sure that these websites still exist. And by speaking to natives, you can learn new expressions, ask what those expressions mean, and then practice those expressions yourself. Of course, you also have the opportunity to use paid tuition as well to help to speak to native speakers, to speak to native teachers, in fact. And again, the IELTSteacher.com, a great place to go if you want to have conversations with IELTS tutors who will specifically work on your collocations ability to help you get a great score in the IELTS exam. So, collocations. Very important. Do try to make sure that you are learning new collocations all the time, and do try to use them in IELTS Task 2 to help boost your score to a Band 7 level. I'll see you in the next lecture when we'll be talking about the importance of word formation. Hi everybody, welcome back. Continuing on with our theme of lexical resource in this section, we're going to focus on word formation in this lecture. So as you can see there, success, successful, successfully, succeed. And those are the words we're going to focus on as an example to help us move into this lecture. So first of all, word classes, word classes. Let's look at those words again. Success, successful, successfully, succeed. What do you notice about these words? Well, hopefully you realize that each of these words has their root, which is success, in common, but they all vary in their form, in their class. So each of these words is a different class of word. Which one is which? Well, we have success, which is a noun. We have successful, which is an adjective. We have successfully, which is an adverb, and we have succeed, which is the verb. If you want to succeed in IELTS, it's very important that you are capable and competent with word classes first and foremost, and word formation secondly. And that's what this lecture is going to focus on. So to use all of those words together, in order to be successful in IELTS, you need to succeed in using word formation. Only then will you find success. So, can you successfully modify these words? That's what we're going to look at. We can modify all of these words by way of word formation. And word formation can come in three different kinds. It's all about the modification of base words by way of prefixes, suffixes, and compounds. And we're going to look at these things in turn, starting with prefixes. So prefixes, what are these? Prefixes are bits of language which are added before the base or stem of the word. You should recognize a couple of these examples here. Unsuccessful. Here, un represents remove, reverse, or not. Underperform. Under here means less than or beneath. Overestimate. So over here meaning too much. You've estimated too highly in this example. So you can research prefixes and use these to boost your score in lexical resource. Let's give you an example about a decent enough sentence, but one which we can improve by way of prefixes. Teenagers who do not agree with their parents, beginning of a sentence. How could we improve that? Teenagers who disagree with their parents. You may think this looks quite simple, but that's a good thing. If you think it looks simple, then just remember to apply it to your essay, and this will help you score highly in Lexical Resource. Bear in mind that there are a huge number of prefixes in the English language, far more than can be stated here. So make sure you do your research and look up prefixes after the lesson today. After prefixes, we can look at suffixes. Whereas prefixes change language at the beginning of a word, of the stem of a word, suffixes will be added after the base of a word. And these suffixes are usually added to change the class of word. So remember the word success. Think about this. Success, we could add full onto the end of success. That's our suffix, full. And forget, full. So if we add full onto the end of a word, we can often form an adjective. Successfully, crucially. Ly can form an adverb from an adjective. Widen, lengthen, simplify, clarify. So n and if I can form verbs. Whereas terrorism, sexism, ism can often be used to form nouns. This doesn't always work. You can't just be adding suffixes, random suffixes to random words. You do need to check with a good dictionary, but it's good to know that you can create these words if necessary. Again, research suffixes, very important. You do your research because there's many more here than the ones I've highlighted. And you can use these to boost your score again in Lexical Resource. So again, let's have a look at an example. One advantage of exercise is that it makes your body stronger. It makes your body stronger. How could we use word formation to improve this? One advantage of exercise is that it strengthens your body. You may think this looks simplified in a way, simpler, because we've used fewer words, but actually that is a good thing. You want to be concise with your language, and we can be much more concise with our language if we know how to use suffixes appropriately. Now, the other way we can think about word formation is with something called compounds. Now, compounding is the linking of two or more base words to create a new word. For example, heart breaking. You've got the noun with the verb. Often, the first word identifies a key feature of the second word. Let's have a look at some examples. They're most commonly found in nouns, but they are found in all types of word classes. For example, here are some nouns. Air conditioning. The air modifies the conditioning. Blackboard. The black modifies the board. Full moon. Adjectives. Full fat. Spine chilling. Seasick. These are all adjectives created from two base words. Some verbs here. Babysit, colour code, proofread. Notice often with the verbs we're going to stress that first word. And adverbs, you've seen these ones before, but these are also adverbs created from compounding words together. Nevertheless, thereby, good-naturedly. So lots of different words we can create from compounding. Unfortunately, I often get this question, there are no specific rules regarding when to use hyphens in words, when to use dashes. So when in doubt, you will need to consult a good learner's dictionary and just try to memorize that word. Memorize the words that use hyphens, memorize the words that don't use hyphens, and memorize the words that are just joined together without hyphens. Unfortunately, there are no rules there. So although this is not the longest lecture, it's still a very important lecture because it's such a simple way to improve your score in Lexical Resource. Hey everybody, welcome back to the course. Now, in today's lecture, we are going to look at something which I think a lot of students struggle with, or at least it's something that a lot of students think is very important in the exam, and they're right, and that is paraphrasing and synonyms, trying to avoid the repetition of vocabulary when writing our Task 2 essay. So this lecture will talk about how to demonstrate a wide range of vocabulary to make sure that we're achieving band 7 or above in lexical resource. But this lecture will talk about 5 different ways that you can paraphrase. So not just synonyms, but lots of other ways that we can paraphrase as well, so that you should have a great number of different ways that you can paraphrase by the end of this lecture. So the first thing to talk about is the band descriptors. Just a quick reminder here of what the examiners are looking for. If you want to achieve a band 7 in lexical resource, you must use a sufficient range of vocabulary to allow some flexibility and precision. The key word there is range, a sufficient range, not an adequate range, which is band 6, but a sufficient range. So there must be enough range. So to achieve a band 8 in lexical resource, you must use a wide range. So not just enough, but actually more than enough. Show you have a wide range of vocabulary. Basically, the greater your range, the higher your score. So let's get started by looking at paraphrasing tip number 1. And of course, it's the most obvious one, synonyms. Synonyms are basically words which are very similar to other words. Sometimes they mean the same thing, sometimes they're just very similar. So it's important to remember, firstly, that there are many ways that we can paraphrase language. Synonyms are very useful, and this is why a thesaurus can be very helpful when you are practicing. A thesaurus is like a dictionary, but instead of definitions, it just lists similar words or synonyms. Now, if you don't own a thesaurus, you can use an online one. So try it now. Look up the word range and then the word synonym. Range synonyms. What do you find coming up? Array, assortment, collection, diversity, mixture, and variety are just a few of the words that appear under the word range. Do make sure you are researching the appropriate context of the word. Range can have a couple of different definitions, so do make sure you're looking at the right context of the word. So how can we use this when paraphrasing? Let's have a look at an introduction here. Synonyms particularly important in the introduction. We know that we need to paraphrase when we write our introduction to the task. Here is a question. A task 2 question. Some people believe that visitors to other countries should follow local customs and behaviours. Others disagree and think that the host country should welcome cultural differences. Plenty of words here that we can paraphrase. Let's see how we've done so. Some people think, not believe, but think that tourists, not visitors, but tourists to other countries should abide by, rather than follow, local rules rather than customs and behaviour. Others dispute this instead of disagree and think that the host country should embrace rather than welcome cultural diversity rather than differences. Loads of different synonyms coming through here. Now, you do need to be careful because sometimes you can't just insert a synonym directly into the sentence. You do need to check that it makes sense. Certainly finding someone to correct your work, a tutor or a native speaker, can be the best way to do this. Also, the above introduction is okay, but it's clearly very reliant on a thesaurus. This can easily make language sound a bit unnatural. Now, check out Joey from Friends' letter. There's a link in the resources to get an idea of how a thesaurus can be misused. Very funny video. It really does highlight why you shouldn't be too dependent on a thesaurus. Now, paraphrasing tip number 2. Change up the word order. So the best way to paraphrase is to mix different paraphrasing skills together. Don't overuse or only use synonyms, but mix them with other techniques. One of those being changing the word order. Let's look at that task sentence again, just the first sentence here. Some people believe that visitors to other countries should follow local customs and behaviour. How have we mixed up the word order? Well, let's have a look. Some people think that local customs and characteristics, still using those synonyms, should be followed by tourists when they go to other countries. So what have we done here? Well, we've used a mix of synonyms, think, characteristics, tourists, and different word order. In this case, we've moved part of the sentence into the passive voice. So instead of the active, other countries should follow, we've turned it into the passive, characteristics should be followed by tourists. That's one way that you can change word order. English is fairly flexible, not entirely flexible, but fairly flexible. So think about how you can change word order when you're looking at your tasks. Right. Paraphrasing tip number 3, word formation. Another way we can find greater range is to modify word formation. Discussed in a previous lecture, in fact the previous lecture to this one, there are often a number of different word formations for a single word. Let's have a look at the task again. Second sentence here. Others disagree and think that the host country should welcome cultural differences. Others dispute this, still got those synonyms. Others dispute this and think that a variety of cultures should be welcomed by host countries. Now what you can see here is, yes, again we've got those synonyms, dispute and variety, instead of disagree and differences, but there's also a change in word order. Again, we've got the passive voice and a change in word formation. Instead of the adjective cultural, we've been able to modify that expression and turn it into the noun culture. Sometimes you'll need to change more than just the formation. That's probably all the time really, because if you're changing the word formation, you're likely to need to change the grammar too. So keep that in mind. But word formation, another great way to find paraphrases. Paraphrasing tip number 4, antonyms. What are antonyms? Well, again, if you can't think of a synonym or you're struggling to change the word order or formation, then you should consider the opposite of the word you're trying to change. The opposite of a word is called an antonym. A similar word is a synonym. The opposite is called an antonym. Let's look at that first sentence again, or second sentence. Others disagree and think that the host country should welcome cultural differences. Others dispute this and think that the host nation should not reject cultural variety. Once again, we have those synonyms, dispute and variety, but we also have an antonym, reject. It's the opposite of welcome, and that is preceded by a negation, not. To welcome is to not reject, in a sense, but remember this is not quite as precise as using a synonym. Not rejecting something is not quite the same as welcoming, but it is again another way that you can find something similar in terms of paraphrase. So that's a fourth way. Let's look at a final way we can find opportunities to paraphrase. Thinking outside the box. Now this is not anything particular, but let's have a look at what I mean. Synonyms, sentence reconstruction, and changes in word formation, as well as antonyms. These are all excellent ways of paraphrasing. Sometimes though, it's just useful to completely change the way an idea is communicated while not changing the meaning. Let's have a look at this. These days, more and more people are going to other countries for significant periods of time, either to find a job or to study. New task here. Let's have a look at how I've paraphrased it. In recent years, the number of people choosing to move abroad, either for work or education, has increased substantially. So much is going on here. There's so much paraphrase, but in essence, more and more has been changed, not with a synonym, but with a change of the way that the idea is communicated has changed to the number of people has increased substantially. Then we've got a more general way of paraphrasing. These days we are going, and in recent years, instead moving the tenses has increased. These days with the present, in recent years with the perfect. So we have these synonyms again: work, education, abroad, instead of job and study and going to other countries. We also have a change in word order. We have a tense switch, present continuous to present perfect, and a complete change in the communication of an idea. More and more was changed to the number of something has increased. This is probably the hardest way to paraphrase, but it's definitely the most impressive as well. So if you're somebody that's shooting for a high 7 or an 8 or even a 9, this is what I would recommend that you practice. Now, having said all of that and talked about the importance of paraphrasing, I think it's important to just scale back a little bit and give a bit of advice on paraphrasing, which might seem a bit contradictory to what we've been discussing. And that is, although paraphrasing is an important part of achieving Band 7 or above, it is just one important part. Although it's important, don't overdo it and don't spend too long thinking about it. If you cannot think of a way to paraphrase within 10 to 20 seconds, just use the original wording. Then underline that expression, come back to it later if you have time. It's much more important to finish the essay and have time to check it than to run out of time for the sake of one paraphrased expression. Okay? So also read in English. Paraphrasing is not as easy as simply changing a few words around. As I mentioned earlier, Joey from Friends, you can see a great example of how using synonyms can be very problematic. If you read lots of English articles, books, novels, etc., you'll see how this natural paraphrasing works. You'll understand collocation a bit better, as we looked at earlier. So don't be like Joey, but do be careful with how you paraphrase. Finally, be selective with paraphrase. There are only so many ways to say parents, for instance. If you try to paraphrase a word like this too much, it's inevitable that you will lead to unnatural or inaccurate or inappropriate language. For example, guardians may be seen as a synonym of parents, but really it's not. A guardian is not the same as a parent, so be very careful and very selective with how you use paraphrase. So, those are 5 ways that we can find paraphrase: synonyms, word formation, word order, antonyms, and thinking outside the box. I hope that this lecture has given you a good idea and a bit more confidence about how to paraphrase. So I want you to go away and try to practice this skill with sentences that you see out and about in novels, in articles, etc., even in the in your practice, and see how it works for you with these 5 tips. And that brings this section to a close. If you do have any questions about Lexical resource, about any of the skills that we've talked about, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll join you in the next section, which will be on grammar. I'll see you there.